Hello, old friend that I've seen a few times before. During this series, I'm actually hoping to talk to a lot of different people, some who I haven't ever actually talked to, except maybe with the odd comment or tweet or whatever, and some who I've been lucky enough to meet in person and who I've talked to online many times. In this case, you and I have met a few times, and we've also talked online in between those times as well. For anyone else who doesn't know you, could you maybe just introduce yourself and then we'll get into it?
Hi everyone, I'm Lee Chantel. Don't know about the bit Ryan said about me being old, but we'll let that slide, Ryan.
I said old friend, like I know.
Okay. But yeah, we've known each other for quite a while online, and we met or we hung out a lot at the Vita Vegan Con a few years ago. That was in Portland, and I wore my bird dress that I bought in Portland as well for you. So get excited, everyone. I run VivaLaVegan.net, and that's been going since 2005, and I've been vegan for 24 years. So
I mean, I don't know. Can we still argue against the old thing between the two of us?
I've moved on
I'm
from
okay. I'm gonna say I'm pretty sure VVC wasn't a few years ago.
it
I
was
think it was a while ago.
2005 or before 2003.
What? No. 2013 maybe?
Oh yeah, it was around Instagram. It was yeah, okay, 2013. Yeah, that would be
Okay.
about
I was gonna
yeah.
say 2003 was a while ago.
That
It was
was
a
long.
whole different world. I mean, obviously we're in a whole different world now, but it was yeah. So right now, where are you? Speaking of the world.
So I'm in around Brisbane in Queensland, the Sunshine State in Australia, and yeah, I'm at my parents' place at the moment. This year, I'm doing my honours for university, so. I decided to do that this year at the end of last year, and I'm really glad that I did actually.
So I guess obviously, I don't know. From what I've been following in Australia, the pandemic has hit.
Mm.
There's definitely some concern and everything. Could you give me an idea, maybe of just how things have changed over the last 2 to 3 months? I'm not sure when it first hit Australia, but I think that's a pretty good time frame for most places.
I think it was the end of last month, and then I'm just basing that on the start of the AFL season, which is the Australian Football League that I'm obsessed with, because we had the first round, and then just halfway through the first round, they said we're not continuing the season anymore, and that was pretty much the week after. No kids were going to school, and then it's just sort of spiraled since then, I guess. But yeah, we there's a lot of different states have different rules, and so
Yeah.
some people, like in New South Wales and Victoria, that there's a lot more people that live there, so they had a lot more restricted aspects from day one, whereas Queensland's only just sort of done a few of those things. And Queensland's like a really big state that doesn't have as many people, it's still a lot along the coastline. So yeah, we're not meant to hang out with any more than two people at once. My mum and my dad are here, so they're both over 70, and my mum's missing seeing her grandson as regularly as they used to. My dad's missing going to do his HIIT sessions at the university gym, and but it's pretty good. They can still go out together on the walks in the morning, and we've got a pool at home too, so Dad and I can still do our swimming. But yeah, my sister's still working, her partner's still working, and then my nephew, he's not at school, so that's really good because a lot of people have lost their jobs or they've had to
Yeah.
work. Um, and because I'm at uni, I haven't been working a lot of things for a lot of hours for a long time, so it's just here and there, and that hasn't been really affected. So yeah, just in the uni mode. But yeah, it's meant like a lot of people are getting fined for having parties or for more than three people hanging out at the beach. A lot of our beaches have been closed
Yeah.
because people are just going, oh yeah, I'm not doing anything now. I'm on holiday, and acting as though they're on holiday when we should be just chilling out a bit.
So what about the university? Because with your honors, you didn't necessarily have like a class schedule, right? Or you
We
had
had
some classes.
Yeah, we had we've got two subjects, and then all the rest is like the honors subjects. So,
Yeah.
um, the one of our subjects, like a counselling one, we were in 1 week and we were just trying Zoom with other people, and then we went on. We've always been on Zoom since that first day. It's all
Okay.
online, and then the other subject is stats subject. The lecturer was trying to keep us all at uni, but then she wasn't allowed to at the end. And then I have a tutorial for stats as well. So I was a bit worried about that because stats isn't my forte, and the more
Same here.
people, and I like a lot of help with that, and I really get a lot out of the tutorials.
Hmm.
But it was really cool because when my tutor was doing all the analyses, we used a program called SPSS. He was doing it there, and
Oh,
then I had mine open, and I could do it right down with all the drop downs. So that was really cool. So it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
yeah.
And like my friends and I, we've been just working on our stats assignment together and screen sharing with Microsoft Teams. And oh, have you got this? These are your data points. This is what you've got, and being
Yeah.
able to that's been really cool.
I am. Oh, you hit a nerve when you said SPSS. It's been a while. I had to do that with my psychology degree, and it was like my least favorite part. I haven't seen that program since I graduated, and
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
okay if I never see it again.
I know it's really painful, but it's what I sort of have to do. So
Oh yeah, yeah, for
yeah.
sure. Um, so are you like you're still on track to be able to finish? Like nothing, it hasn't been delayed in any sense?
Well, there's a because it's honors and we're a bit of a higher sort of standard.
Yeah.
Um, they've sort of said to us like if you can't handle stuff now, you maybe should drop out and do it next year. But the undergraduates who aren't at honors level, they're not classing things like if they fail a subject, that's not going to be on the GPA. It won't be
Oh, okay.
like that. So they've done a few things like that, but we won't be included in that. The only thing it hasn't, to be honest, this hasn't really affected me because my life's been about uni for like 3 years. So
Yeah.
I'm just doing it at home. So because I was at my parents', I've been having to drive down to the Gold Coast where I study. And yeah, so I've got more time back because I'm not driving 2 hours a day when I have to go down.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'm able to just get in the zone. But because I'm doing a research project this year, and I'm doing it with social robots and preschoolers, and
Okay.
how the differences between how preschoolers interact with a social robot instructor versus a human instructor. And it really would be great if we could do it in person. So that might not happen, but we have a backup plan where we'll just do it sort of like what we're doing here, and it'll just be pre-recorded.
Hmm.
So that we won't really know until July if that's going to happen, to be honest. And then there's another aspect of my year is a placement. So we're meant to get a bit of experience in an area. So if we're not allowed to go in anywhere, and there's a lot of the people that have put their names up for placement that just aren't accepting anyone anyway, including PhD, including like higher sort of things as well. So people might not even want people.
Yeah.
So will just be taken out of the program if that happens. And honestly, I'm okay with that too because then I'll gain like 30 plus hours. So I'm all about the time and energy management. So that's not a problem for me.
Yeah. So you mentioned what was it, July, you said, for the schools? Like is that where it's standing now? Like they're not really gonna, is that like all schools or just university level or?
It's just my university
Okay.
trimester 2. So I'm in the middle. I'm halfway through trimester 1 at the moment. They've extended the break. We had a month break in between first and second. They've added another week to that. So yeah, I don't know. A lot of the stuff we'll know around about week 1 of July. And I think if, like a lot of places, I've just spoken to my friend Ethan from New York and my friend Holly from LA today, now from you in Saigon. But yeah, I think a lot of people are saying it's going to be another 2 months plus.
Yeah.
But just recently, they're allowing kids to go back to school. So that's interesting.
Okay. It's kind of funny because like here, when it sort of first hit, like we were kind of on the same. I mean, it hit China first for sure, but like it was definitely on our radar around that same time, because I mean, part of Vietnam shares a border, and there's a lot of like back and forth. But both Vietnam and China were pretty much. I can't remember if it was like the tail end or in the middle of like the New Year, and so like in Vietnam, for some people, like they're off for like weeks. Uh, in some cases, even like a month. So it's like serious deal. Like everyone goes back home. Cities like Saigon is basically empty. Getting
Yeah.
a flight or a bus or a train is like useless because just
Mm.
everything. So basically, when it kind of hit, they just extended the Tet holiday for at least a week for the kids and stuff, and now it's just continued. Like right now, I don't think I I don't know what they've said as of yet, but I think there's no real talk of bringing the schools back in,
Mm.
and that's countrywide. Like that's not just like I think Ho Chi Minh City, like Saigon, was the first one to say, okay, we're shutting the schools, and then like the rest of the country was just like, yeah, that's a good idea. And then when it kind of started in Canada, like they had their first case like back in January, but it really sort of hit last month, and that was like right around March break. So again, they just sort of were like, okay, we'll kind of extend things, but that's also when they were telling everybody who had left for like winter break to go to Florida or Costa Rica or whatever, they were like, okay, everybody get your butts back here, like things are going to get serious.
Well,
So,
so the schools had a week earlier from their holiday. So
yeah,
that was interstate, like New South Wales and Victoria. And then they just did that a bit later for Queensland because I think I think it's differently paced out.
mhm,
Um, but yeah, Queensland sort of didn't get on top of the no schools thing for a while, and there was a bit of a problem with the Queensland unions as well because a lot of the teachers were saying, "Hey, we don't want to go to school and look after these
yeah,
kids," especially like I heard from some of them that are over 60 because they've been saying people over 60 and 70
yeah,
shouldn't be going out. They're not allowed to see their grandkids, but then you've got teachers that are that age that are meant to look after other people's kids. So everyone was just confused.
yeah,
But I personally am really, other than that, for the older teachers, I really think schools is really important to keep going. Just, a psychological aspect for the kids that there's something that's, a routine, something is normal, and that interaction with their peers is really essential. And
hmm
in particular, you have to think about accessibility. And I know there was a stat from Pew Research saying that I think it was 25% of Americans students don't have access to Wi-Fi, and our
yeah,
Wi-Fi is ridiculous as well in Australia. And also if you imagine all the things like you and I, we've always worked from home, so it's not a challenge for us to do this. But there's a lot of people who it is challenging, especially if you've got mum and dad at home who are meant to be working from home with 3 or 4
yep,
kids that they're meant to be schooling. How's either one of them going to get done properly? It just won't. And then there's some people, if you think about the family lives that they grow up in, there's more people at home, more domestic violence issues happening, there's more drinking happening as well, and there's some kids that can't actually get space to even have quiet or be able to do anything, and
hmm
it's really troubling. So I just think it's really important for the kids to go back to school.
yeah. I mean, here I wrote a piece for one of the national papers a little while ago to get an idea of like what the foreigner community were doing because like the schools have been closed now for months,
Yeah.
um, and to see like okay, what are how are the families handling it and everything. Not surprisingly, pretty much everyone I talked to, it was all going relatively okay because I mean here the foreign population at least say like in terms of like the English first language kind of thing, they're either teachers, so
Mhm.
they're all now home able to teach their kids, or they're like people that have been doing remote work or whatever for companies outside of Vietnam, so they haven't lost their income. And also their kids are going to international schools, which are like have pretty incredible funding relative to the school system here. So they, switched over to online learning pretty much soon after they shuttered. But I am concerned here because there have been so many other people, like especially in the smaller communities, that, now suddenly, even if the school system is saying, "Oh, there's online learning," like you said, like
Yeah.
accessibility to the internet and everything. There's actually a story in the same paper about this ethnic minority group. I think it was in the north, and these two kids were basically going up on this hilltop because that's where they could get like a 3G signal on their cell phone, so they could go and do like some of their classes. And their parents put up like a little tarp and everything to kind of help shade them from the sun. But of course, then they're also paying for data. So they
Mm.
actually would take like a day off and go work in the field, like in the farms, to make a little bit of money so they could go and put data on their cell phones
Yeah.
so they could go back and do school. And I
Mm.
was just like, wow, that's like, because I mean, so much, if you listen to like a lot of the nonprofits, one of the big things, of course, is education
Mm. Yeah.
and
It's
ensuring that kids can have it, because obviously it's not just a short term thing, right? Like,
yeah.
someone missing out on their first year or, eighth year or whatever down the road. Because I think some schools back home, they've just decided, oh, you're going to pass whatever grade you're in, you're
Ours
done
is
now.
like for the people who are about to finish year 12, like the last year of school, they're using year 11 marks. So,
Wow.
yeah, and if you think about, like, I know, so we have prep now that you start school from prep and then year one, and in
Yeah.
Queensland we have to start from year one. So this year I know it's affected universities because all the people that were coming through that we missed like a year of people. So there was a bit of a like a not as many people coming through, so not as many jobs, not as many positions, rah rah.
Mhm.
So if you think about just the flow on effects of if you keep people back a year, if you keep say all these people at the moment to repeat a year, like that's it would just cause so much like flow on effects.
Yeah.
And I don't think I think also like my nephew, he's doing really well with his studies, and it would affect him somewhat. But people that are struggling, and like a few of my friends have children with special needs, they can't look after them at home. They can't
Yeah.
give them the care that they need that teachers are actually giving them. So they're missing out, and other people who are not understanding things as well are missing out. So yeah, I'm all for going back to school as soon as you can, and obviously the teachers should be able to choose if they want to do that.
Yeah. I was thinking like, could I even, if I had a kid, they wouldn't really be a kid, they'd be like university age. Could I teach them SPSS if I had to? And I mean, I can't even remember like long division. I mean, because all that stuff we learned in high school and elementary, like, I mean, most of that now I'm doing it on this thing
Yeah.
if I
I
need to, right?
long division, so I remember that quite well.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, it's yeah, I wouldn't want to be teaching someone something. And I know a few parents have said, oh, what I learned 20, 30 years ago, then that's not how they do things anymore. Because I think someone was saying something along the lines of you'd work it out in your head, like you knew your times table to work out what it was. I can't remember there was a term for it.
Yeah.
But then they're saying nowadays they just go sort of straight to the answer without maybe working out the how. So that was a bit interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I've got a few friends who are dealing with like little kids,
Mm.
and and I think plus like at least at home and here, like they're really pushing the social distancing and only going out for required things. So at home, a lot of people have been pushing back on the fact that like they think they should at least be able to like go out for a walk, or like there's a story actually at home about a family, maybe it was in the States, who got fined like almost $900 because they were all rollerblading in a parking lot, and they're all living together like they're a family, and there was no one else in the parking lot, and a cop actually took like whatever, was bothered by this, and told them they were supposed to be social distancing, no more than, 2 people in a group, whatever, and gave them a ticket for like almost $900.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Our,
Yeah,
our,
it's
our fine over here is $1,433. And yeah, it's you're meant to just 2 people. You can go and exercise. You can go to the doctor. You can go to work. You can go to the shops for essentials.
yeah,
I went to visit one of my friends because I had a Pilates physio appointment. So I went to visit her on the way. She lives alone, and I was joining her, and we went and got takeaway food to eat back at her place. So you can do some sort of thing like that. But yeah, it's not meant to be. It like in all the beaches I was saying before are closed because a lot of the people from Brisbane were going down south and just working on their tans on the beach, which I'd love to do as well. I'm a swimmer. I love oceans.
yeah.
So that's what I'm really missing at the moment, to be honest. But we're not meant to do it, so just suck it up.
Yeah, yeah. There's been people here have been fined for not wearing masks. One guy is actually going to be facing prison because he got in a fight with the cops. He was drunk and they were like, "Hey, you're supposed to be wearing a mask." And he was like, "Who's going to make me wear one or whatever?" And he threw a punch. So yeah, obviously, it got a little ridiculous. But yeah, there's been like the papers covered here, like people have been out flying kites and stuff, like in another district, and they're basically just like, well, we're bored. I mean, thankfully, if believing the numbers that are being reported, like thankfully it actually hasn't been really bad here. So I feel like I'm taking it serious because I kind of have to, because there has been a sort of shift in the attitude of, oh, it's coming from foreigners and all that stuff. So like I feel like if I went out without a mask, I would probably maybe even get in some trouble. Thankfully, the neighborhood I'm in, like the vendors that I deal with in the morning and everything, they know me. They know I've been here for over a month. But like I was almost gonna sneeze this morning,
Yeah.
and I was wearing the mask, and I was outside, and I was just like, you cannot sneeze right now. Partially because I had the mask on, and my hands were full of like produce and stuff, and I was like, don't sneeze in the mask, don't sneeze in public, don't do it. No, 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 no. Luckily, it passed, but it's strange, right? Because in so many ways here, like you kind of said, like my life hasn't changed a lot. But when I do decide, okay, I'm going to go out to the market, and I feel anxious about it, that's when I'm like, oh wait, things have kind of changed. Like I shouldn't be. Literally, the market's at the end of the street. Like it's not even a 5-minute walk. It shouldn't be like a big thing. And then I come home and I'm like, okay, take the mask off, go wash my hands, blah blah blah. But I mean, then I have friends at home who are like going through a serious like medical grade procedure of sterilizing all their groceries and like having things delivered at the foot, like the bottom of their steps, and then bringing it in and hand washing everything and like.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I mean, there's different extremes, right?
Yeah, I'm not at that stage. I'm not like I don't know. I've always been big on the hand washing. So we did a course last year or the year before at uni about, and my lecturer, she was like really into disgust, and that was something she studied, and she was talking about hand washing. And I also watched this show, what was it called, The Hot Zone? Did you watch that on TV?
No.
And it was around about the time Chernobyl came out, and everyone was obsessed with Chernobyl, and no one really put much attention to the Hot Zone, which was amazing. And I read some articles that, I can't remember her name, the lady from The Good Wife, she starred in it, and she was talking about, she met the infectious disease person, and she said, just pay attention. She said, I don't shake hands anymore because just pay attention to how many times people touch their face. And after I read that, I was totally trying not to touch my face, and it's really hard. Just like a natural sort of thing that everyone does, including the animal kingdom. And and just from then, I was just really aware of those sort of things. So I'm just, I think I was just a bit ahead of that from other people. But I guess for me, when I go outside and like get go groceries or something, I'm just really, really aware to be extra nice to the people at the store.
Yeah.
people have been so horrible to them, and I just try and have a little, like, I'm normally pretty sociable and have a chat to people anyway, but I'm just like, how are you going? Are you okay? You know, and just things like that with people. So I'm just making a lot more of an effort to do that, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm hoping this has kind of highlighted some things like that, like general hand washing and everything. Because I mean, I think people are very much like more aware now of the environment and like how there's so many chances to get things and stuff. And I mean, I hope everyone doesn't go to like an extreme with it, because obviously there can be like issues with that. But I think people being a little more conscious of it and washing their hands more is a pretty good thing. And I'm not sponsored by any soap companies or anything. I'm just saying in general,
Not
keeping
yet.
your hands clean is nice. Yeah, not yet.
He sent an
So I
email
mean,
if you know me.
I can see the PR emails right now. Um, so I mean, I guess if things haven't changed that much for you, are there any things that you have kind of had to change or like adapt to, like any routines that you've sort of put on? Because I mean, if you're working from home, maybe not. I mean, I know other people working from home is like a total shift and like definitely a weird thing, but for you, like maybe your 2 hour drive not being a part of it is great. But is there
Well,
anything else that you're doing?
I'm really big on routines, and I'm really big on, you know, making sure I've got balance in like my life. As much as you can do that when you're doing honours year at uni, but I get up, I do my Pilates or my yoga and my exercise for say 40 minutes, have a quick swim in the pool for like maybe 10 or 20 minutes, you know, have my shower, eat my breakfast while I'm looking at my emails, and then it's uni work. Have like half an hour break for lunch, uni work until, you know, 7 or so, and then I watch like a couple, like 2 or 3 hours worth of some of my reality TV shows that and I honestly can't handle too much at the moment, like too, like really heavy sort of TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love Homeland, that's on at the moment, that's a bit heavy, but other stuff I've just been watching, all my reality stuff I don't have to think about. So yeah, I'm just doing that. I'm watching The Circle UK at the moment, so that's my latest obsession. And then just that's it. I'm just repeating that. I'm doing the exact same thing every day. So it's a bit monotonous, but I've just had a uni break, but I've had like 3 assignments to do for my proposal. So it's just, you know, and I'm very good at like, this is what I have to do this week, and these are the steps I have to do. And I've always been good at, okay, this is my major thing I have to do today, and as long as I do that, it's okay. And then maybe
Mm-hmm.
do all the smaller things. So I'm very good at focusing and getting stuff done. I know for people that I'm friends with that don't learn very well online, or that have ADHD or something like that, they're just not able to focus and they get
Yeah.
distracted easily, and it's really hard for them. But honestly, it's just the same thing for me. I'm just doing it at home. Not
Yeah.
going. The thing that I'm missing the most is I'm not having my ocean swims. Like that was really good for me. And I loved doing that. And I just can't do 2 kilometers in the little smaller pool at home. But yeah, I'm getting like my Pilates and yoga stuff, and I'm really just every day doing that, and that helps. Like, as long as I do something physical, and if I do it in the morning, then it helps. You know, helps a lot of stuff. Especially, you know, if someone's anxious and depressed and uncertain about everything, I really suggest getting into the exercise, because it helps with a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I've had a few friends actually here, two friends that have been struggled in the beginning because like they suddenly weren't able to go to the gym.
Mm.
And one of my friends has basically been like altering his like jogging session based on like, okay, yesterday there were a few people out, so now I'm gonna have to go even earlier or
Yeah,
whatever. Just because he finds it has been helpful for him.
definitely.
But yeah, I know most of the stuff I've read so far, the routine is definitely a big part of it. And like I said, like I'm really bad at it. I always have been, but it hasn't been a big shift for me because I'm still working from home. But I know like my sister is now suddenly working from home, and I think
Mm.
she's been finding it sort of strange. And I think her cats are too. I've got a lot of pictures of her cats lately.
Freaking
I
out.
think, yeah, I think a lot of animals now are like, what the hell is like? I'm glad that you're here, but you're ruining my routine. Like, I'm supposed to be on your bed sleeping right now, but
I
now you want to go for a walk again?
Yeah. We've got a neighbourhood cat as well, Scruffles, and she'll just come along. So it's really, if you do have animals or you've got animals near you, just, 10 minutes in the morning, just giving them a cuddle or a pat and sit out in the sun if you can. And like, that's really nice. So just like you have to like really appreciate the little things. And that, I always like, whenever I go to bed, I always like, thank you, universe, for this or that. It's like remembering why you should be grateful. Like, we're alive, we don't have any health problems. Our families are doing okay. Most, family, like my family, all got their jobs. Everyone's healthy and happy. Yeah, we're a bit inconvenienced. Can't do the things you want to do, but this isn't forever, and just do what we can. And in Australia, we're doing really well. We've only had, I think it's 9,000 cases at the moment. We haven't had many people die. And if you compare that, I know we don't have as big a population as, say, America and stuff, but that's pretty good. We're doing well because of all and I like to say physical distancing rather than social distancing, because we really need to be focusing on the social elements, and I'm doing that with a lot of my friends and my uni friends as well. We don't see each other every day, but we can meet up on Microsoft Teams and Skype. Sort of speaking with some people today, and it's just focus on those things in particular around sociability and interacting with people.
Yeah. Can you imagine like if this happened like 30 years ago?
Yeah.
Like without being able to do this? I mean, granted, I don't know if I'd be on the other side of the world if I couldn't just like video chat with my parents and everything, but like to even like not be able to follow Twitter or like local news. I mean, because now like I am able to go out and get a paper, but like that would involve going out to get it, right? And that would have been your only news, maybe not 30 years ago, but a while ago. You would have to get the paper or wait for the local news, and like your long distance chargers, I would like to think the phone companies would probably have offered a rate, but like I mean having to oof.
Yeah, we really have a lot of things that we can use to make this less bad or easier to deal with. So yeah, just focus on those sort of things, and also try not to get obsessed with the news. Like, I know a heap of people just put their TV on all day and you're listening to that all the time. And my parents in the morning, it's the first thing that they do, and I'm like, you can't do that. You need like maybe look at the news at 6 o'clock for the news, or 1 o'clock when you're online, but just really got to limit it.
Okay, so I'm supposed to only have like an ending question now, but I do have one other thing that I want to ask you about, and not entirely sure if you can answer it, but since you're the first person I'm talking to in Australia, I'm going to ask. Obviously, similar to Canada, like a lot of the country is relatively empty. Like, I mean, I know there are people within the outback and everything, but definitely it's more concentrated on the coast. Has there been any sort of like the Canadian government is kind of like there's been some funding initiatives and everything, and definitely some towards like northern communities, but there's also been a big push with a lot of the communities at home, like for First Nations and Indigenous, to shut it down like before it even comes into their community, because obviously there's a whole history of that sort of thing. Has there been any like concern or communication from like the Indigenous populations there? Like, has it shown up in the communities at all, or?
I honestly don't know how much they've interacted with the Indigenous community, come up with these decisions. But I know from state-based, like in the Northern Territory at the top, that there was a lot of the Indigenous communities, or not just there, but throughout Australia, that no one's allowed into them. So they're just meant to stay the Indigenous people or whoever's in that area, that's it. And I would like to hope they've had interactions with the elders of that area, but what white people are like. And, but I also know in Queensland, my home state, a lot of our cases have been at the Gold Coast, where I do university, and in Brisbane, where I am, and at Cairns, which is up north, so more touristy, and a lot of people come and go from Cairns because it's up top. So they're the main sort of areas, and there's been a lot of regional areas within Queensland that have closed their borders and won't let anyone go into them. Longreach, or I think there were some cases in Toowoomba and in what was the other place? There's a few that are had some cases and they just didn't want it to go out any further.
Yeah.
So there's been things like that because, like I said, our state is massive. So there's just so many little areas. So they're trying to not get it from the cities or the populated areas into those regional areas. And it seems to have worked so far.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
You were before about people coming into your area. The majority of people who have had coronavirus and the people who've had COVID-19 and who have died are people who've come off boats, like the
okay.
What are the tourist things?
The cruise ships?
Yeah, cruise ships, that's it.
Yeah.
And so there's one cruise ship in particular that docked in New South Wales that has had, I think, 200 people, and the large majority of them got sick and a lot have died.
Yeah.
And people who've come from overseas. So they're the people who have infected other people, but generally it hasn't really happened unless those things have been.
Yeah. I read an article a little while ago that apparently cruise ship bookings have gone up for next year. I don't understand why, because to me this is like the sort of final nail, being like, yeah, it's a bad idea to be stuck on a boat with a lot of people.
I was talking to my parents about that last night because they were saying, oh, I think they'll struggle next year. And I'm like, no, because you've got everything. Like, I'm just thinking about people in Australia, a certain type of people in Australia who don't like to go outside of the norm and what they're used to. They're quite happy to be on a boat and have all their food, especially alcohol, provided. And now I think they're adding free Wi-Fi, or it's more affordable, and you're just there and you just do whatever you want. So I think that's a really, I can fully understand why people want to do that. I'm not into cruise ships. I've never been on one. I don't know what they're like, but I don't like the idea of being trapped somewhere you can't escape from. But and it's all there. You pay, a certain amount of money, you're covered. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Your kids or your family, you can meet up with all your friends, and
I can see the selling point. I would have thought there'd at least be like a year of like going, oh no, maybe we'll do something else next year.
But also remember, people like here in particular, they're like, make sure you support these people, make sure you support them. So they're probably, something's been, if they want to go on a holiday, they're like, who's been affected the most? Oh, it's the cruise ships, we'll support them. And it's that, I think it's that sort of mentality. And also, remember, people forget really easily. So there's a heap of things that I'm hoping will stick around, like being a bit nicer to people, and just, people are making more of an effort to communicate with people instead of just texting and social media. So those sort of things stick around. But then once we go back to normal, people just remember, unless this goes to, say, 6 months or something, I think things will just go back to normal.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of, now I'll ask the ending part. Okay. Talking about the ending of the pandemic, not the ending. Hopefully it won't come to that. Your first day, when you get the all clear and everything's back to normal, what do you want to do?
Probably I'd go to Palm Beach, which is down the coast at the Gold Coast, and have a swim there, do my laps in the ocean, and do about 2K over there, and then read a book, and that'll be.
So what about?
Go to some of the vegan places. We've got a heap of vegan places to eat down there. Get a smoothie, falafel, or some pancakes.
Oh, falafel.
Yeah. There's a really good falafel place at Burleigh. Ryan will take you there one day, but it's that's what I do.
So what about, speaking of supporting travel and everything, what about a month from now, or from then, or later on? Will you be doing any travels?
I'd love to travel November and December, because our thesis is due Friday 30th of October at 12 p.m. Not that I know that in my head or anything, but so I'd like to do something after that, but it just depends where the world's at, really, doesn't it? So I'd like to be overseas in my beloved Ubud in Bali, Indonesia. So that's what I'd like to do. But yeah, we'll see. I can't really make too many plans when I'm at uni. I'm just, trying to get through the year really and see where I go if I do my PhD next year. And also all this stuff puts some plans on hold. Most plans on hold, doesn't it?
It's an interesting thing, eh? Like, I mean, I feel it's kind of strange because I feel like, it's sort of happened kind of slow, kind of. Maybe not as slow as people would like, but we see all those disaster movies. You grow up with all these like major earth-changing things, but they're all usually like super quick. Like there's an asteroid headed to us and Bruce Willis has to save us or whatever. But this has been like months. So I just wonder if like we're kind of, I mean, I feel like people are aware, yeah, like stuff is different and this is serious. Well, most of us are. But I wonder if it would have been like a whole different thing if it just suddenly like one day changed. Or like, I mean, because this could be, this could be months into like, I mean, they're talking before a vaccine could be like 12 months to 18 months. So it's this long, drawn out change of the world. But I mean, like, will they ever make a movie of it? I don't know, because it's not as dramatic, right? Like,
but when you're saying that, I think there's elements like, say, I could probably compare it to like a world war starting or something. There's elements of that happening. Like, there's, oh yeah, some dude called Hitler's like getting the people to uprise, and they're like having heaps of meetings and stuff. And there'd be, spies from all of those sort of countries that would know people on the ground that are talking about this stuff. There's people that have said, oh yeah, I'm mates with one of the not me, but I've heard people say like I'm mates with some of the people that do the disease or whatever it's called, disease. I can't remember the term, but
something or another.
He works in infectious diseases, and he said to me months ago something's coming. So if you're interested in that, like infectious diseases, you'd be like, oh mate, did you read this article so and so from China, or China did this or something? You're putting all that stuff together. It's just we're not interested in it. The media's not interested in it until it's like if you're really attuned to all that sort of stuff, you probably know some things are coming, and it's just when most people weren't aware of it until they had to do something to change, because then it's affecting them, isn't it? Yeah. So
I mean, granted, some people still aren't. Like in some ways, I feel like because of how things are going here, like if it had gone different, I mean, right now we're at like, I think 265 cases, maybe a little more, and nobody's died, and there's like probably 140 something recovered. So we've only got like, I think active cases, there's only like 90 or something.
Ryan, Canada or Saigon?
No, this is in Vietnam. Canada's a bit of a disaster, like shockingly so, speaking in terms of preparation. And there's been articles between Canada and the States and the UK about how much people knew and how many people were saying like, look, this is going to be a thing. Like, we need to be ready for this. But I think, like I kind of said, like, because it's not some, really tangible, dramatic thing, it's like, oh, there's this little bug that we can't see that's going to take over the world. And people are like, what? You mean like the flu? Like, whatever. We're sick, it's okay.
If you think about all the people, like the climate change people who've been speaking out about climate change and all that sort of stuff for years, who's paid attention to them? We just started to, because we had a heap of floods and then fires in Australia. But it's the same sort of thing. Instead of actually listening to the people who know what they're talking about and it's like their expertise, we're going, oh no, let's not freak out. It's not a problem. Like all the Trump and the Fox News and sort of stuff, like that's not helpful. You want to be telling people the actual truth. We know that it doesn't sell. Emotions, things, and outrage. So
it's too bad that is it Dr. Fauci, I think, who's like the big, the infectious disease guy in the States that should be sort of overseeing the meetings and everything. I mean, he can't really be the movie superstar, right? Like, he's not the Bruce Willis or the Rock. I know. I mean, like, apparently a lot of people have been falling in love with the guy. He's got fans apparently, like, that have been rather vocal about their love for him. So I think that's great. I mean, with both of us, with the university background and the stats and everything, having scientists be up on a good sort of Hollywood celebrity status, that's fine. I mean, that's the way the world should be headed now, because I think we need that. Unfortunately, we need a lot of stats too, which I'll let them deal with. I don't want to hear it.
It's another thing, because all the stats is just going to come from China, or it's just starting to come from China now that we can actually do anything with. But the majority of stuff we don't have stats for to say, oh, we should do this or we should do that. Hand cleaning, hand washing, and the masks, supposedly there's not enough stats to say that that actually prevents anything. But that's all we've got, so that's what we do. And there's a lot of, people were saying, oh, we should stop the kids from going to school because then they're spreading stuff to their grandparents. But that's just based on the flu. Like, there's no stats to back that up at all. So, yeah, everyone's just, in my opinion, I hope everyone's trying their best to get through it and try to listen to the people who know what they're talking about, and don't spread all the disinformation and the misinformation, because there's a lot of it out there.
Yep. Well, on that note, I'm going to say thank you so much for joining me to share sort of your corner of the world. Well, not corner, because I don't want to suggest a flat Earth, but your piece of the world.
Yeah.
And hopefully at some point we'll cross paths again when the planes are flying and everyone's back to normal. We don't have to shake hands when we do meet again, but it'll be good to see you in person, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks everyone for your time, and take care of yourself and each other. Bye.